Hello everyone. My name is Betty Coleman. I'm here to talk to you today about considering making a legacy gift through the endowment fund to TVUUC. I did so several years ago through a special program that was made available through the UUA, and this program called Wake Now Our Vision matched my legacy funds up to 10% with monies that were given to our congregation now. So that was a nudge that I needed and took advantage of to get the ball rolling and to get the paperwork done, which was not difficult, and to make my legacy gift to TVUUC through the endowment fund. I hope that if you're in a position to give a legacy gift and to start thinking about it, you will consider doing so. There are many ways to do it, many accounts from which you can consider drawing, and we can provide advice on doing that. It's a wonderful feeling that I have, and I'm so glad that I made this gift, and know that for many, many years to come, even when I'm no longer here, the good work of this church will be supported in part by the legacy gift that I made. Thank you.
I'm Jenna Mashburn, and I joined the church in 1976. I believe in immortality, but just not the heavenly afterlife of some religions. Mine is the immortality that comes from actions here on earth, such as making a financial commitment to the church endowment fund. Seeking a UU kind of immortality, I've included the endowment fund in my will, and I take pleasure in donating other times as well.
Hello, my name is Amy Morris Hess. I've been a member of TVUUC since 1981. For about the last 12 years, I've been making annual contributions to the endowment fund, earmarking each contribution for the RE subfund. I do that because my son grew up in this church, and my grandchildren are now growing up in this church. And giving to the RE subfund of the endowment fund is the best way that I know to make sure that everyone's great-grandchildren for generations to come will enjoy the same excellent experience that they have had.
Amy Morris Hess, who is a professor emeritus at UT College of Law, will conduct an online seminar on estate planning this coming Thursday evening, October 22nd. All are welcome. Just visit the church website and click on the Give tab to reach the endowment page, where you can find out how to register for this event.
We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the love. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the love. And we pray that our unity may one day be restored, and they'll know we are human by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know that we are human by our love. We will move with each other, we will move side by side, we will move with each other, we will move side by side, and together we'll spread the word that love is in our hearts, and they'll know we are human by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know that we are human by our love. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the love. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the love. And we pray that our unity may one day be restored, and are human by your love, by your love. Yes, they'll know that we are human by our love.
Our opening words are a poem by Sophia White. At the time of writing this poem, she was a 16-year-old growing up in the foothills of Appalachia. It's called Dare I Hope. Dare I hope to hope? Is it safe? Is it right? Am I hoping for nothing but a black and empty night? Hope should make me happy. I should laugh, sing, and dance because I am hoping, right? Ha, not a chance. How is it that hope can leave me trembling in the darkness? How is it that something so good should leave me feeling helpless? Dare I hope to hope? What difference does it make? Fate will be fate in the end. It will either make or break. Does fate regard my hope? Does she listen or care? Am I shooting for a star that simply isn't there? I cannot know, oh God, why must I struggle with this doubt that pulls at me, rends me limb from limb? What sort of hope leaves pain where it should instead leave joy? Is this hope at all? Or perhaps some wicked demon's ploy? I cannot know, dear heaven, how can I even begin to dare to hope for something, anything? Is no assurance there? No promise? No guarantee? I cannot stand it, I cannot. The doubt is a plague in my every thought. Dare I hope to hope, in a hope that leaves me dry and lost? How can I dare to hope in hope? How can I?
Shalom Havarei, Shalom Havarei, Shalom, Shalom. Lahit Rayot, Shalom, Shalom Havarei, Shalom Havarei, Shalom, Shalom, Lahit Rayot, Shalom, Shalom Havarei, Shalom Havarei, Shalom, Shalom, Lahit Rayot, Shalom, Shalom Havarei, Shalom Havarei, Shalom, Lahit Rayot, Shalom,
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your
I have a story to share with you today that is adapted from one written by Aaron McImris called The End of Beavertown. Now, Beavertown was a pretty great place to live if you were a beaver. It was home to lots and lots of beavers who had been there for as long as any of them could remember. Now, it wasn't so much a town as it was a series of 3 or 4 ponds connected with underwater tunnels and channels, and it had everything a beaver could possibly want to live a happy life. Lots of big green trees for chewing, fish for chasing, underground dens for hiding away in the winter when it got cold and for raising their pups. It was a pretty great place to live. Except one morning, the beavers in Beavertown awoke to find something that was not okay was happening. And that was that the water in their ponds was draining away. Now, nothing like this had ever happened before, and they figured out pretty quickly that they needed to find out why the water was draining, because they needed that water to survive. And so a contingent of beavers set off to figure out what was happening to their water and where it was going. And they were gone for a long time, for a full day and a full night, and finally the next day, a group of exhausted beavers returned to the town, and they looked kind of sad and scared. And the other beavers gathered around them to ask them what they had found, and they said they had traveled further than any of them had ever gone before. They traveled so far that they were just about ready to turn around and give up when they found the new farm. This was a huge farm. It had lots of big buildings and lots of big noisy machinery, and it had vast fields around the farm, and they had big metal pipes that was spraying water over all the plants. That was where their water had gone. It was going in those pipes to the new farm. And the beavers, understandably, were really upset. Now, all of us need water to live, but beavers maybe even more than most of us. Everything they do has to do with the water. And just over the time that the contingent had been gone, they had noticed that their beautiful town had gotten even more dry. This was a big crisis. And the beavers were upset. Some of them were crying. Some of them sat down where they were looking scared and confused. And after a little while, something strange started to happen. Some of the beavers started marching around saying things like, "Woe is us! The end is near!" And things went on this way for a while, and bigger crowds of beavers began to gather with their chants, "The end is near! Prepare for the end!" But there was one beaver who didn't take part in any of that. And that was old grandmother Beaver. Now, she was the oldest beaver in Beavertown, and some of the younger beavers were a little bit scared of her because she was really old and she was really tough. She didn't talk much, but when she did, she spoke her mind. She spent a lot of her time sunning herself on an old stump right outside her den. But this day, when she heard the chanting going on, she got right up off her stump and she thumped into the town and found the circle of beavers. And one of the younger beavers gathered up some courage and said, "Oh, hi, grandmother. Are you here to wait for the end of the world with us?" She fixed that beaver with her fierce stare and said, "No, I most certainly am not here to wait for the end of the world. I am here to talk some sense into you silly beavers." She said, "Do you think that we have never been without water before? Do you think that no beaver has ever struggled and suffered?" And the other beavers were quiet for a moment as they thought about this. And then one of them spoke up and said, "Oh, well, I actually do remember that winter so many years ago when I was just a pup, when the water all froze and we didn't know what to do." The others began to think about their own puphoods and the things that had happened in the past in Beavertown. And they remembered other times when there hadn't been much food and many of them had gone hungry. Times when things were really hard and people suffered. Beavers suffered. But the beavers of Beavertown had always made it through because they loved one another and they took care of one another and they kept on going even when things seemed hopeless. Old Grandmother Beaver reminded them of that and then asked, was there anyone here who would be willing to help go and find some new water for us. Because what we need to do is not to just sit around giving up. We need to go and find what we need. It was silent for a moment, and then one young beaver piped up. She thumped her little tail and said, "I will go, I will go." And that was all it took. Soon, one after another beaver began taking up the new cry, "I will go, I will go." And so it was the next morning that from among those who had volunteered, a group of beavers set out and vowed not to come back until they had found some new water, a new home for those of Beavertown. And they were gone for a long, long time. For 7 days and 7 nights they were gone, and the beavers left behind in Beavertown were very worried. But they kept on living their lives, doing what they could, and taking care of their pups. And finally, on the morning of the 8th day, the exhausted group returned. They could barely speak, they were so tired. But they said, as they looked around at the other beavers, "We found it." And so, after a good rest, the next day, all of the beavers of Beavertown left and traveled together to find the new ponds, where they live to this day, still happily building dams and fishing and playing and splashing together. And they learned that even though things might look really terrible, things might be really hard, it doesn't mean that it is the end of the world. And there is always work to be done to make our world better.
Affirmation of hope. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is a struggle yet ahead. We know that the struggle is the hope for the future, and we affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns. And we stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm brotherhood and sisterhood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. And we affirm a unity that opens our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the image of God, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathered community, we will discover the strength not to hide in indifference, affirming that hope publicly expressed, energized, and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays. Joy! This beautiful morning, we are greeting and meeting and seeing each other via the internet, but feeling close to each other. We share this moment, and in this moment, I'd like to raise up the concerns of people who are still healing, the people who are looking for a new place to live. I'm looking for a shelter away from violence. I am lifting up people who have lost a beloved family member who was four-legged and furry, but was so important to their lives. We are raising up today that people are worried about November, but yet going out to stand in lines for a few hours. Let us all bring together our worries, our concerns, and put them in this place, and think about them and meditate on them, and hold them knowing that we support each other, that we hold each other. Join me in prayer. We come before you in this beautiful day with the wind blowing, the sky blue, flowers around us, trees weaving and woving back and forth. We come before you knowing that we are safe in our space at this moment and that we have the opportunity to bring to the world comfort, joy, peace. And I ask that you fill us all with that peace so that we can go out and show the love that is necessary. I ask you to care for the people who are in the midst of war. I ask you to care for the people who are sick and injured. I'm asking you to care for the people in hospitals facing this dreaded disease. You can help us get through all these things. And so I am just sending out my joy, my love, and my comfort, knowing that we are not alone and that we need only reach out and touch to know that we are not alone. Give us that strength. Give us that determination to face each day, knowing that we are here, the arms, the legs, the voice, the smile, to change the world. That is our hope. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Claudia Presley, and I'm the Director of Administration at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. Thank you for joining us today. Today is a Share the Plate offering. What that means is any contributions that come in today that are not designated as a pledge will be split between TVUUC's operating budget and the IMES Nature Center. The ways you can give are to go to tvuuc.org/give, or you can text give to the number 73256, type in TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a great day.
come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is a life of but so is a life. Oh, so is a life. So is a life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? See we know who I am? Do I know who clearly? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is a life about you are. So is a life. Oh, so is a life about you are. So is a life. Oh, so is a life about you are. So is a life. Oh, so is a life about you are. So is a life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I know who I am? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? See we know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is a life about you. Oh, so is a life. Oh, so is a life about you. Oh, so is a life. Oh, so is a life about you. Oh, so is a life. Oh, so is a life about you. Oh, so is a life.
The other day I was walking down the street and I noticed that there was a house where they had put up a sign in the yard, and the sign said, "Hope is not canceled." Apparently there's a lot of other houses putting up this sign. Some congregations and community organizations are launching a movement to put out these signs that say, "Hope is not canceled." Apparently, these signs were inspired by a statement that someone wrote and circulated among their friends, and then somehow it got onto the internet and spread all over. And this statement got spread during the beginning of the pandemic, when so many things were being canceled. Concerts were being canceled, weddings were being canceled, memorial services were being canceled, church services were being canceled. So many things were being canceled. And so a person wrote up these words and circulated it among their friends. The statement reads, "Not everything is canceled. The sun is not canceled. Nature is not canceled. Love is not canceled. Music is not canceled. Reading is not canceled. Imagination is not canceled. Kindness is not canceled. Good conversation is not canceled. Hope is not canceled." It's a very hopeful message to get out there in the world in these times when people are struggling for sources of hope. But here's the thing. My vision isn't what it used to be, and so when I was walking through the neighborhood, here's what I first saw when I looked at that sign. I saw the words, Hope is now canceled. And sometimes that's how it feels. It didn't help that the house where they had this sign, they were also celebrating Halloween, so there were skulls and skeletons and graves in the yard, so it seemed kind of like hope is now canceled. And it was kind of a bleak impression, not a very hopeful impression at all when I was looking at that sign because of my bad eyesight. And I know people are struggling for hope right now, and there are many things that might make us feel discouraged. One of those things may be that Congress and the Senate and the President can't seem to agree on a stimulus bill that will help us in this time of need when so many people are unemployed and so many businesses are closing in the midst of the pandemic. It seems like our elected leaders should be able to get together and pass a plan. It reminds me of the time when I was an exchange student in England and I was listening to the BBC radio to a satirical news channel where the announcer came on in that deep baritone voice and said, "The Prime Minister would like to announce that in order to conserve energy, cut costs, and exercise fiscal responsibility, the government has decided to extinguish the light at the end of the tunnel." And that's how it feels sometimes, like someone, somebody, or something has extinguished the light at the end of the tunnel. And it feels like hope is now canceled. And we struggle for sources of hope. Sometimes when people tell us hope is not canceled, all we can do is hope that that's true. Whenever I'm in Washington, D.C., I like to take a pilgrimage to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Monument. The monument was inspired from a line from Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech, where he declared, "Out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope." This monument speaks to the universal human need to find hope in hopeless times, to find hope when we are discouraged, to find hope when we are demoralized, to find hope when we are disrespected, deserted, to find hope when we are defeated. Sometimes the mountain of despair looms so large that we totally fail to see the stone of hope. There are times when despair seems big and hope seems small. But one of the ways we know that this need for hope is universal is that the sculptor who created this monument, Lei Yuxin, he is from China, and he was inspired by Martin Luther King's dream, living on the other side of the globe in a different decade. And another way we know that this need for hope is universal is that people from all over the world, from every nation all over the world, come on a pilgrimage to this monument. And this monument is a sculpture, and it seems as if the artist is trying to draw at least one picture, to sculpt at least one image of what hope looks like. And that image was inspired by these words which Martin Luther King spoke from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963 when he spoke of his own need for hope. He said to the civil rights marchers gathered there before the Lincoln Memorial, "This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day." This speech, given in 1963, speaks of a hope that is felt now. This is not just about a hope from another decade. It's not just about one person's hope or one group's hope. This is about the hope for freedom for all people in all times and in all places. And it must be our sacred duty to work together to keep this hope alive. Whenever I wear this hat around town, I find that people expect me to be knowledgeable about the Chicago Cubs. But here's the thing, I know almost nothing about that professional baseball team. Indeed, I don't follow professional sports on television very frequently. But here's the one thing I know about Chicago Cubs, that for most of my lifetime, the Chicago Cubs were known as the lovable losers. And that's because until fairly recent history, they hadn't won a World Series since 1908, which means that they had been losing for over 100 years before they finally won big in the World Series in 2016, which was a lot of hoopla in Chicago on that evening, as you can well imagine. Now, I didn't buy this hat because I was too attached to the baseball team. Instead, what inspired me to buy this hat was an election season where every single person I voted for went down in flames. No one I voted for won. Every single person lost. It was a very humiliating defeat. And I decided, well, if I'm going to be a loser, at the very least, I could aspire to be a lovable loser. And the reason I mention that today is because early voting started here in Knox County and all over Tennessee. And there are long lines in East Knoxville, West Knoxville, North Knoxville, South Knoxville, long lines of people waiting to cast their ballots. And some of us have mailed in our ballots. So what propels us to go to the polls? I want to suggest that what propels us to go to the polls is hope. It's hope that our one vote will make a difference. It's a hope that our one small effort will make a difference. That if all of us participate in the democratic process, it will make a difference. And that's the only thing that really can get us out of the house and get us out there to participate in the democratic process, is that we have hope. And here's my hope. My hope is that when all the votes are counted, and my hope is that every single vote will be counted. What I know is that some of us will be winners and some of us will be losers. But here's the thing, if we work at it, every single one of us can be a lovable loser or a lovable winner. That is the source of my hope. I recently encountered a great biography about Dorothy Day that not only captures the spirit of this peace activist, social justice organizer, labor organizer, just a powerful, committed life to working for peace and justice in the world. They also captured the spirit of her times and a lot of her values. Here's one of the things that Dorothy Day had to say. She said, "People say, what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time and take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There is too much work to do." No one has a right to sit down and feel helpless or hopeless. This sort of captures the idea that hopelessness is for the leisure class. Hopelessness is a luxury item. Hope is for those who are willing to do hard work. Hope is for those who are willing to put in an effort. And that's why it's an important virtue. Hope is for those of us who are willing to take one step at a time, lay one brick at a time. From a mountain of despair, we will carve a pebble of hope, a pebble that will make a splash that sends ripples in all directions, affecting everything, everywhere it goes. Hope is a universal need. Now, I am in the church late at night, and I'm in that part of the church which I call my hope spot. This location right here in our art gallery is our hope spot. Let me tell you why. In the year 2006, the Tennessee legislature put together a proposal asking voters to vote on an amendment to the Constitution of our state that would ban same-sex marriage. Now, this was a discriminatory effort, a discriminatory and hateful effort, and I organized an interfaith group and wrote an interfaith statement opposing this ban on same-sex marriage. And I was surprised how many clergy and how many leaders of faith that I got to sign this statement. We had a big event at one of the local churches, and there was a lot of media around. So we were a visible and vocal leader in the community working to prevent this amendment to the Constitution that would put discrimination into our Constitution. However, when it came time for people to vote, people voted to pass that amendment that would ban same-sex marriage. And the media all came to our church looking for a comment, and they caught me in this spot. And here is where I gave the interview on that day when all our efforts had come to naught. And I will tell you that I did my best to give a hopeful message. I did my best to put a positive spin to say, even though we've lost in this particular effort, we're going to continue to struggle. We're going to continue in our journey toward justice, and we have faith in the goodness of our neighbors in Tennessee. I'm sure I said a lot of hopeful things. But the truth is, I was not feeling any of those hopeful things. I was not feeling hopeful at all. I was feeling discouraged. I was feeling defeated. I was feeling in despair. And I left the church that night feeling like a not so lovable loser. So fast forward to the year 2015. The Supreme Court of the United States has passed a ruling that legalizes same-sex marriage, and our church has the privilege to host the first legal same-sex marriage, and it's a media circus. There are reporters everywhere that have come to cover the first legal same-sex marriage in our county, and it's a joyous, happy, celebrative. I can't tell you how happy I was that day. And at some moment I looked around and I saw John Coffey and Keith Swafford, the couple who were married that day, and they were surrounded by media. And they were standing in this spot. They were standing in this spot, and there was so much joy, and there was so much love, and it was such a wonderful day. So this spot in our church is my hope spot. And when I'm feeling discouraged, and when I'm feeling hopeless, I go out of my office and I walk down the hall and I stand in this spot. And this spot reminds me that love is not canceled, joy is not canceled, commitment is not canceled, community is not canceled, hope is not canceled. May it be so. Amen.
Open, and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
There is hurting in my family, and there is sorrow in my town. There is panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round.
I am open, and I am willing to be hopeless. Would seem so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes.
I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears.
I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Lift me up to the light of change.
Our closing words are from Unitarian minister Andrew Pakula. Afraid of the dark. In sightless night, terrors draw near, nameless fears of talon and tooth. Hopelessness yawns before us, an abyss, alone and unknown in the gloom, longing for the dawn. O sacred flame, blaze forth, wisdom brought to light. Guide us with the light of hope, the warmth of love, the beacon of purpose and meaning, because we are all afraid of the dark. Let there be light.
As you log off your computers and go out into the world, I hope you'll find ways to stay connected as a community. If you don't have our newsletter already, I encourage you to sign up for it and check out our heart-to-heart circles or our check-in with the minister or many of our religious education classes, ways that we can stay connected during this time of pandemic. Although we are socially distanced, we can still come together and be a community. Go in peace.
Open and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before